to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, where we help ministry leaders succeed from the beginning. We talk about all the stuff that no one told you about ministry leadership. And Christy and I are back from vacation and not feeling well and allergies and all of the fun stuff that happens with the change of weather, because the weather doesn't know what it wants to do. We've got tissues, which, you have tissues at hand. I probably should have grabbed tissues before we started. So my nose is a bit, I know, right? My nose is a bit snotty, folks. So I will try to remember to mute myself if I have to like snort or cough. But you know, we're keeping it real here, so I might forget. But yeah, we are back. I think that we are well rested and ready to get back to talking about some of those things that nobody ever really talked to you about when we first started. And gosh, while we were gone, you know, a lot of things happened in our world and our country, and there's a lot of trauma out there. There's a lot of really heavy things that are happening. We had the sad just massacre of the children down in Uvalde, Texas, and it's gut-wrenching that you know, here we are again with another school shooting. You know, just yesterday, not 24 hours ago, we had a workplace shooting in Maryland. 3 people died there. You know, so we've got a lot. You know, one of our local students at one of our Catholic high schools passed away last weekend. There's a lot of trauma going on in our world, and a lot of things that are affecting our young people and their parents, and people who don't have children, and people who are single. This is really affecting a lot of people. And so Christy and I today, we're going to talk a little bit about emergency response from the pastoral perspective, and what we can do as church leaders. And I think if you take away nothing from our conversation today, that you start to think about what you can do in the context of your ministry at the parish. Ask questions as to if the parish has emergency response, and what those are. And if nothing is there, maybe encourage the conversation about that. So, you know, a couple of weeks ago, Christy, before I got sick, before all of this, we got talking about, you know, what is, you know, the emergency response, and what should be part of it. And, you know, I'm just going to open the floor, Christy, to your initial thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is when we first had that conversation, we both had to be careful about getting in the weeds about that. And so I think that the first thing that we want to iterate to folks is, number one, there should be some kind of emergency planning for a multitude of issues. I think that when you get into church ministry, a lot of people are thinking, we've said this at the top of our podcast, you know, it's going to be love and rainbows and holding hands and praying and being close to God, and everything's going to be just wonderful and peaches and cream and lovely all of the time. And the fact is, real life still affects the church. So everything from whatever your area has to deal with on a natural disaster kind of a thing, like fires or flooding or snow, what are your plans for how to communicate to folks about what's happening? And what are your plans for how to evacuate children out of a building that's got some kind of damage or something going on that you need to get them out of it? I didn't think about that until a senior DRE told me. You know, I was a catechist at the time, and she said, we've got to create a fire safety plan. And I was like, for what? And, you know, she was like, well, because these things happen. So I think first and foremost, what we need to think about is, if you're working out of a parish school that's active, does the school have a plan that's already in place? Can you just utilize that for your programming? But do your catechists know? Do you have a communication plan? And that sort of thing. But then we also wanted to talk about today, like, what is our response to the trauma that people are experiencing because of what's happened around them? So thoughts, Sarah, on those 2 points, Major?
Yeah. I think the communication is really key in making sure that that your catechists know what's going on and where to meet. You know, I mean, when I was a kid, my parents had a safety evacuation plan for my sister and I in our house, you know, and we met at the cherry tree at the end of our driveway. Anything happened, you go to the cherry tree at the end of the driveway. You know, so where is that place where you're going to meet with everybody and all of your children and your young people if you need to evacuate? Where is that on church property? I think that that's really important to have stated on the walls, evacuation. At our parish, we do have like if somebody gets shot, there's an actual kit for a gunshot wound. And so when I started, they showed me where all of those were. Now, do I know how to use that? No. I need to go in and look at what that actual wound care looks like so that should something come up, I can do that. We have one in the youth room, we have one in the ushers room, we have one in the main office, we have one in the front office. You know, where, you know, do you have something like that? Do you know where your first aid kits are? I was trying to get a Band-Aid for somebody and I went into our kitchen thinking, yes, there needs to be a Band-Aid. There's a first aid kit in here. I couldn't find it. It was behind the door that I walked in. So it's not easy to see. And then also, you know, I asked about a burn response kit in there that I didn't see. Of course, it was behind the door. It was expired in 1981. Right? Like, what? So all of that is updated. So asking the questions helps our parish come up to date, right? I asked the questions, where is the first aid kit? Because I didn't see it. Maybe behind the door is not the best place for it, because if also, I couldn't see it and I was looking for it, what happens if somebody else who's a parishioner, it walks in there and can't find it, right?
Well, and here's the thing, just having the box is not good enough. It has to be stocked with stuff, because that happened to me.
Right? And up to date, like your Band-Aids actually have to stick. Right? Like if it's from 1981, the sticky stuff probably doesn't stick. And they probably still have those old, you remember the Band-Aids that had that red piece of string that you used to pull to open up? Like, I don't think anybody knows that anymore. Now you just kind of rip it open, but those, I mean, how do you open a Band-Aid from 1981? You know, so these are things for us to think about in that sense. Now, you know, a trauma response of the death of a child is really, really rough. And I think that that's something for us to take into consideration as well, is what are some things that we can do as a parish to help people process what's going on, right? Like, I remember processing 9/11 with students. It was like first year on the job, maybe. It was my first year on the job, so they didn't really know me. But even opening the church and sitting with them and praying with them helped them in the processing of that. You know, so inviting people to come to the church for quiet time. If you need somebody to yell at and to curse at and to scream at, you come to the church and I'll be there. Right. And to help somebody process through some of that anger and resentment and remorse and survivor's guilt, you know, allowing people to talk and to share and to sit in silence and quiet and to process that is really important. And so part of that response would be, who are the people who are going to sit in your church with your community that can listen, right? Do you have people who are trained spiritual companions, people who are small group facilitators who know how to ask questions for clarity, for processing? Is there somebody in your parish who may be a therapist or a counselor who might be willing to donate their time during these traumatic times to be able to use their gifts and talents in that manner? who are these people, and do you have them on an easy list, an easy email, an easy way to get in touch with them, so that when something comes up, you can say, hey, we're going to work through this plan A for our trauma response, which is everybody show up at the church. We're going to have a quick prayer service. We're going to do some Eucharistic adoration, if that's something that your church is used to. And we're going to have time for quiet processing, allow people to light candles on the altar. This is what we're doing this night. Plan A is this. Plan B is this. You know, and whatever that situation is, bringing forth the plan that works the best.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are just some things to think about. And I think that sitting down with staff or leadership of your ministry and just talking through this, and then presenting it to staff if you're not part of staff, I think would be really helpful in just at least getting something outlined or getting the conversation started.
Yeah, I think the other thing that came up for me in the days following the most recent school shooting was, what are we doing as church? And, you know, I think that people are asking the question of, like, aside from, you know, thoughts and prayers, what are we doing, or what can we do? Like, especially for us, we're in Southwest Pennsylvania, so it feels a bit removed. But two things I think are important for me to mention here as well is thoughts and prayers are important, and it is what we have to offer. And so please, please don't let your community go past an event like this without bringing those prayers into the prayers of the faithful for the weekend, because we live in a global world now. And in the US, there's connections all over the country for people. So you don't know who in your parish community, even if you're in Alaska or Maine, that you could be connected to people that are in, you know, Southwest Texas. So paying attention to that sort of thing. But then also, I think maybe if sometimes, you know, bulletin deadlines are what they are, but like, if you can get something in a bulletin about like how to reach out to your senator or your, you know, your government officials, and how do you start to work on changing the laws? What needs to be in place for us to start to understand how we can make a safer and better world where we actually respect all life?
Yeah, actually, that's a really great idea. And even if you haven't checked out this document, Faithful Citizenship, Forming a Christian Conscience for Faithful Citizenship, I think is the whole name of it. But it really does talk about what are some things to consider when voting, right? So we've got some preliminary votes going on out here, some primaries out here in Maryland. I know California just had one. They're all over the place now. So really, in taking a look at your candidates and what are the things that you want to see happening with regards to these specific traumatic situations, right? And then, yes, I would say also calling your senators and representatives, both on the state level and the federal level, I think is really important. You know, stepping into protests, you know, I think tomorrow, if you're tomorrow, Saturday, the 11th of June, whenever you're listening to this, there are going to be more protests in March. The next March for Our Lives is coming up. And this is presented by the students from Marjorie Stoneman High School. I think is what it is. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, folks, in Florida. And that was a drastic, tragic situation there as well. And these kids, they are doing the work of advocacy, right? And if supporting the people who are advocating for those things that we as Catholic Christians find important. And faithful citizenship really runs through the Catholic social teaching that guides our lives as Catholic Christians, right? Those things that guide our lives are the dignity of the human person, right?
Yeah.
And the dignity of the human person, no matter their age, in the womb, end of life, all of that is who we care about. And what does that mean? That also means our environment. That also means food and basic tools and resources that people need to live and to survive. So, walking through that with your parish and parishioners, whether that's on social media, through little video clips. I do believe the USCCB has some video clips on the Catholic social teaching that is connected with faithful citizenship. So you can Google faithful citizenship USCCB. Most likely it'll take you right to that page. So I think connecting with your officials is really important. A lot of people think it's very scary. I had an opportunity maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. It was during COVID, so maybe, somewhere in the last 2 years, connecting with our state and representatives with the Maryland Catholic Conference. And so that's another place to check out, is your local Catholic conference, your state Catholic conference. And we set up a meeting to meet with our senator and representative from our area to talk about the things that were important to us. And it was basically, this is who I am. This is what I want to talk to you about. This is why this is important to me. And I'd like to see this representative or senator do something about this. Right. And you just voice your concerns. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. In fact, it might only be 10, 15 minutes. They're probably going to ask you for your name and your address, a way to get in touch with you should the senator or representative want to do so. So, they're going to ask you some of that basic information. Of course, make sure you're a constituent. But then, share with them what you're thinking and what you're feeling and be specific about it. I'm a Catholic and the dignity of life is important to me. And AR-15s do not uphold the dignity of any life. Any life, whether it is, saving your livestock from a coyote or just having it to shoot at, targets, or an 18-year-old walking into a high school. It does not uphold the dignity of life. And I would like for you to do something about that. Right. And that's all you really have to say. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to present a whole presentation. Just let them know that this is a concern for you. And that makes a big difference. It really does make a difference. I will continue to support you as you move forward through this, whatever,
I think the other thing there too, Sarah, like you said at the end, I continue to support you. Be open to the ways that your local government officials might be able to tell you different initiatives or activities that are going on in your area that you could participate in that would help move,
right,
the dignity of the human person forward. In your community. So like whatever is happening, different groups, or maybe there's legislation in your area they're trying to put through, they need more support or whatever. And you can be part of that and actually have this tangible something to do around there.
And we do vote with our feet, right? A lot of people are like, we vote with our feet, so we're not showing up to church because we're mad about this, that, or the other. So we're not showing up, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's also the flip side of that in showing up. You do vote with your feet. So if there is an advocacy opportunity, show up. You don't have to say anything. Your physical presence there is important. You add to the numbers and voices that are saying this goes against who I am as a person. This goes against basic ethics and morals. This goes against the morals of our society and what we wish to uphold, right? So, when you see opportunities for that, that is a way to encourage your community to get connected as well. So I love, Christy, that you said put something in the bulletin, to do that. If you have social media, pop it up on social media. Know who your audience is, on social media. Sorry, my allergies just kicked up. Give me a second. I'm gonna mute myself a second.
Well, I had something to add there anyway. So I think that it's important to, oh my gosh, I lost my mind. Your sneeze just threw me off, girlfriend.
Sorry.
We were saying about getting stuff out there and putting it in. Oh, and being present and having the courage to speak up. I mean, that whole, like, I was at the airport over the last week for my travels, and the sign said, if you see something, say something. And that's the other part of this. I feel like, friends, as Catholics, and particularly as Catholic leaders, we have to say something. It is our responsibility, whether you thought this was going to be part of your job or not. The thing I wish somebody would have told me is stepping into the leadership role means saying something when stuff like this happens. And I think that there's a way to be careful around politics, because people have different ways of approaching how we're going to handle the dignity of human life, and they have, different perspectives on how that's going to be applied. But at the end of the day, we still have a respect and dignity for all human life. And so stepping up and saying, like, shootings are wrong, and people that have mental illness should get the assistance and help that they need, that there's no shame in that. And that we should be here as a community to support people when they need whatever the assistance is, so that we can help them through whatever those issues are. I think that's also something that needs to be pointed out. So if you thought that it wasn't your job,
it is.
It is.
It is. It really is our job, and it's hard. And that's where the gifts of the Holy Spirit really do come into play, and for us to call on the Holy Spirit to work in us and through us. I mean, Christy, you brought up a really good, another really good point is the mental health aspect of trauma. Right. And trauma response and emergency response. And not everybody who has mental illnesses is going to buy an AR-15 and take it into a classroom. That's not everybody. And we as leaders also want to be responsible in how we talk about mental health. And one of the things that I just connected with this year, and I thought it was really profound, and I would recommend it for everybody, is mental health first aid. The Archdiocese of Baltimore put out a goal of training 1,000 people in mental health first aid throughout the Archdiocese. And I thought that was really amazing. And in my parish, my youth minister and I took the training. I took it both in the youth training and in adult training. So there's special youth training that's slightly different than the adult training. And it was really a profound opportunity. And I mentioned it to the rest of our staff. And I looked at our business manager, and I said, this would be really good for you. I looked at our pastor, I said, this would be really good for you. And I looked at our secretary and said, you are our front line in pastoral care, in welcoming, and in mental health first aid. I said, so I think it would be really wise for you to take it. And she's been taking it, and it's really been helpful for us as a team to have language to talk about first aid for mental health, right? And I think the more people who have tools and resources in their pocket for mental health first aid, we can de-escalate situations. So when the authorities are called, they can be called in a safe manner, right? So that they're not coming in anxious, hyped, nervous, and ready to pull out whatever weapon that they have.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really key, is learning the language to, when I call 911, I can say something like, we have a mental health situation. I'm a mental health first aider, and I have somebody here who is in mental distress. Can you send somebody who has training in mental health situations? If they are riding in a squad car, can they come in with the lights off and the sirens off?
Yeah.
Right. And you can ask all of those things. And that was just one thing that I learned there is, can you come in with the sirens off? Can you come in with your lights off, because as soon as you see that, somebody sees that, anxiety pops, right? And so we don't want to do that. We want to keep everybody calm and attempt to de-escalate. And that was another thing that I learned there, was how to de-escalate a mental health situation. Right. So I would strongly encourage that. There is an organization out there for mental health first aid. Take a look and see if your diocese is doing anything. Encourage your parish to go through it, and really come up with a plan of action for when there is a situation where somebody is anxious, or reacting in a difficult manner of sorts. So those are just a couple of things that I would suggest with emergency response and pastoral care. These are just some things that kind of popped up. I had the opportunity back in what does it say, 07, 08, to work with the organization Center for Ministry Development. Unfortunately, the organization disbanded, but they had a course in pastoral care. And so I would encourage people that if this is something that you want to have a solid foundation in, not only look at, mental health first aid, but look at a course in pastoral care, right? Because this course, very early on had me really write down what are some things, who are some people I want to make sure that I have as resources. What do I have the ability to affect? What change do I have to affect? And, what are some things that give people a solid footing in their faith and in church and in their lives to help them work through things. So it was a course on pastoral care. It was a part of their certificate in youth ministry studies. And I'm not sure, but if you're interested, I would check out the University of Dayton to see if they have something there. And I think Notre Dame's STEP program might have something on pastoral care as well. Those are two areas I might check out. If you have any other areas, folks who are listening, feel free to drop those in the chat below. I'd love to hear what organizations offer training in pastoral care, as well as first aid for mental health.
Yeah, I think Franciscan at Home also has something.
Oh, awesome. Franciscan at Home. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, these are things to think about. I encouraged our youth minister to come up with a game plan over the summer before the school year starts, right? What is your emergency response for fire alarm? What is your emergency response for active shooter? What is your emergency response for when a student dies or a beloved faculty member dies? What is your response if a parent should pass away tragically, unexpectedly, or even after a long illness? What do you have in place? Who are your leaders that you're going to call? Who are the local resources and such? So anything that we might be forgetting, Christy? I mean,
there were two things that I was thinking of. One is for sure, make sure that the reason why you keep attendance at all of your programs is for these situations. It is not a check mark to make sure that, people are meeting their criteria, but it is to know who you have on campus when anything happens so that you can account for everybody that you have. And there was something else. Oh, don't be afraid to cancel whatever lesson or thing that you had planned so that you can interrupt in order to intervene for pastoral care.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Helping people to process where God is in this muck and in this trauma, or the fact that they don't feel God in this trauma is more important than whatever your lesson plan is.
Absolutely.
Hands down. I wish I'd have known that at the very beginning. That is my answer. What do you wish you knew at the very beginning? That listening to your students and the people that you minister to is more important than whatever the lesson plan is, and being with them in those moments is more important than information on scripture or whatever it is that the lesson plan is that week. Helping people to learn to pray during these times, right? Yeah, this is really traumatic. What do we want God to know? What's on our heart that we want God to know? Because sometimes just being able to name it starts that healing process. I don't know what this feeling is. I don't know what this pain is. I'm angry. Tell me about that anger. What does that anger feel like? Where does that anger stem from?
I'm
Tell me more
confused.
about that.
I'm not sure. I don't understand how God can let these things happen. All those kind of questions that come up. The other thing, I don't feel like I wish I knew it. I wish other ministers knew is these are the reasons why you have sufficient amount of adults and you don't allow people to just willy-nilly show up to your programs and things like that, because the safety of our people is pastoral care.
The safety of our people is pastoral care. Yeah, it is.
And that means making sure you have enough grown-ups to cover the amount of kids that you have at a program. It means that you have a plan for emergency communication and response, and that you just step in and you lean in when things are hard and scary and confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that seems to be a norm of our world right now. And no, it's not fair. And no, it's not right. And yes, it is sad. And that's something that we can lean into. And one of the graces of our faith is knowing how to connect with God and the peace of the Holy Spirit amongst all of that.
Amen.
You know, so thank you for joining us today, everyone. This was, Christy and I were really kind of back and forth on this one throughout, and just what does it mean to have an emergency response, and just what is a pastoral response. And we'd love to hear from you, please. I know we say that a lot, but this one, I think if we can really get some conversation going in our chat here, I think we could come up with some really great resources for both our well-seasoned ministry leaders who have been listening. Thank you very much. And those who are new, and we're so glad that you're here. If you're new to ministry, we're so glad that you're here. I really hope that you feel that you're gaining some solid foundation with our conversations, and that this conversation really sparks something profound and meaningful and supportive throughout your ministry and your parish. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be much. But asking the questions and having something written out for your team to see will be helpful. And we never expect it to happen to us.
Yeah.
We never expect it to happen to us. We never expect it to happen in our little towns, in our big cities, in our little neck of the neighborhood. And so, you know, when it does happen, it can be profound. However, having a game plan can help support people through it, and make something that's a tragic situation something that can be God-centered and filled with the Holy Spirit and graces, and help people move through it in a healthy manner, to live their life in a healthy manner, and to continue to breathe and to move forward in their lives in a profound way. So you are key to emergency response and pastoral care. And so take some time. You know, summertime for some ministries, it kind of slows down a little bit. So take your time over the summer and come up with that game plan. And share it with us. We'd love to see what you already have or what you come up with. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will chat with you next week when we have another guest speaker with us. And we will, Christy, can you share with us who we have next week?
So we have Darren Nelson is coming to join us next week. And oh my goodness, I don't have it in front of me, you guys.
That's okay, don't worry. I'll pop it up there somewhere.
All right, so it's going to be an exciting conversation about actually living your Catholic discipleship as a leader.
Ooh,
yeah.
Living your Catholic discipleship as a leader. All right, everyone, with that little tease, we'll let you go today. Thank you for joining us on the Catholic Leadership Network. Have a wonderful week. Keep breathing, keep moving forward. Take care.
Peace.